जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तविंदा. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Welcome back. In the last session we actually discussed about how Lord Brahma is the first recipient of the knowledge of Veda directly from Krishna, and that knowledge which was received is the information was transformed directly into the heart of Lord Brahma from Krishna. And then we were discussing about the accepting our quota. Whatever is set aside for us, we should only accept that those things. And then we discussed how Arjuna's quota was to understand what was Krishna's need. Actually, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, he presents argument that he doesn't want to fight because he would kill his own king's men and he would not be able to enjoy the kingdom. But after hearing Bhagavad Gita from Lord Krishna, then Arjuna decided and he actually expressed that I shall act according to your words. Karishye vachanam tava. Then Prabhupada talked about the goal of human form of life. The goal of human form of life is not to get entangled in this material world, but then focus the energy on understanding about his position and the position of the Lord, and then prepare to get out from the cycle of birth and death. Prepare the human life for the purpose of liberation. Liberation means getting out from the cycle of birth and death. That's a cycle in which we are stuck right now, all of us. So after getting liberation, then what? So that is the last statement which we read was, all this is clearly described in, if we properly utilize the instruction of Bhagavad Gita, then our whole life will become purified. So this is the purpose of the human form of life. Purification. Purification from what? From the contaminations. What is the contamination? From the contaminations of the three modes of material nature by which we are covered. And then once we become purified, then ultimately we'll be able to reach the destination which is beyond this material sky. So this is given by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. He has given the introduction of what that spiritual sky means, or where does he resides. So then once we go to the spiritual sky, then there is no question of birth, death, old age and disease, and there is no question of going through the cycle of birth and death. So that is eternal. So now the concept of eternality is being explained in this particular session, where Prabhupada is defining what is Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal. That destination is called as Sanatana sky, or the eternal spiritual sky. In the material world, we find that everything is temporary. Temporary means it exists for certain period of time. It is not false. False means it doesn't exist. But no, it exists, but it exists for a very short period of time. Few years, maybe our life existence, maybe maximum 100 years, and similarly other living entity have their lifespan. But all this is temporary. It comes into being, stays for some time, produces some byproducts, dwindles, and then vanishes. So these are the 6 stages of transformation through which the temporary has to go through. Basically, it comes into existence and then stays for some time and then produces a byproduct. Like, in a human form of life, we take birth and then we grow, and then we have some byproducts, means in this case we have some children, and then we get dwindle, means we get old, and then we die, that is we vanish. That is the law of the material world. Whether we use an example of this body or a piece of fruit or anything, you take any example, this has to go through all these 6 phases of transformation. But beyond this temporary world, there is another world of which we have information. We have information means we have information through scriptures, through Vedic literature, through Bhagavad Gita, and many other Vedic literatures. That world consists of another nature which is called as Sanatana or eternal. So, beyond this material world, there is some eternal world. Now, this can be understood whenever we see a diagram. So, I'm going to present a diagram or introduce a diagram, and this diagram becomes our map. So, this is a diagram of the material and spiritual world. Now, this is not anybody's mental concoction, but this is actually given, the descriptions are given by Lord Brahma. Because when the Vedic knowledge was first imparted to Lord Brahma, then Lord Brahma saw everything. Krishna gave him the vision to see everything. And then he composed a prayer called as Brahma Samhita. So, as we know about the Veda base, we have been introduced how to look at Veda base, where all the scriptures are available. So, in this Veda base, you will see a book called as Brahma Samhita. Yeah, Sri Brahma Samhita. This is a book. So, when you click on this book, Brahma Samhita, so there are two sections, forward and the Brahma Samhita itself. And then these are the texts of Brahma Samhita, which was directly spoken by Lord Brahma. Right? So there are verses, text 1, 2, 3, and like that. And if you see this picture on the sides, I will expand it so that you can see it better. So here it is written Brahma Samhita, verse number 21, 22, 26. So all these descriptions you will find the verses, different verses in which actually Brahmaji is explaining about this picture, whatever we are seeing in a picture form. And this picture will become our map for future discussion, because I'm going to use this picture to explain things. And as we go into, there's a lot and lots of details in this picture. And as we study further, we are going to use this picture as the map. Like we want to go from one place to another place, and we generally use the maps to understand how that place is, where it is, or where we want to travel. We need to know the place properly. So similarly, this map will give us a visual image of what our current understanding which we will be going through. So this is the picture of entire creation. Now there are different pictures available. I'll be probably using different pictures too, and these pictures, we will go into different section of those pictures as I describe, so you have a visual idea of what I am speaking through these sessions. Okay. So this picture indicates that there are this is one universe. Okay, and then this particular space where it is written Brahma Jyoti is the separation between the material and the spiritual world. So anything below the Brahma Jyoti is the material world. This is all picture of the material world in which we are. And this is the spiritual world. This is spiritual world on the other side of Brahma Jyoti. Brahma Jyoti is in the middle. And if you see, it's like a rays coming from the Lord himself, who is actually located in the spiritual world. And when we expand this picture, then you see earth, and it is said over here, you are here. See? So we are on this earth, and it indicates over that you are here. And after studying Bhagavad Gita, our goal is to go back to Godhead, or go back to spiritual world. So spiritual world is up above here, right? In the spiritual world, there are many planets, innumerable planets actually. There are innumerable planets in the spiritual world. So anybody can go into the spiritual world in any of the planets they desire, right? And the description which is given is, originally we are in the spiritual world and then we come to this material world. So originally we are in the spiritual world with Krishna, any form of Krishna, and then we come to the material world, and the reason is we come to material world is we want to enjoy separate from Krishna. That's the reason we are sent here. So when the eternal word is used, the eternal means it is beyond the covering of all these material planets. Eternal is all these things above the Brahma Jyoti. This is all eternal. There is no birth, no death, no old age, and no disease in this area, or in this region, you can say. So coming back to our discussion in the introduction, now you'll have some idea about what I was speaking here, or what Srila Prabhupada has given. That law of the material world, whether we use an example of this body or the piece of fruit or anything, so those things actually has to, in the material world. So in the diagram, in this area, the living entity or everything has to go through this 6 transformations. The 6 transformation, it has to go through the 6 transformation, which is, it appears and then it stays for some time, producing some byproducts, dwindles, and then vanishes. That is a law of the material world. So in this world, this law is applicable. Like in jails, there are certain laws applicable, but those laws are not applicable outside the jail. So similarly, there are different laws at different places. Like one of the law in America is to drive on the right side of the road, whereas the law in India is you drive on the left side of the road. So when we come to the world, then we must know this, or this part of the world in America, then you need to know those laws. And if we say that, we don't know the laws, and we start driving on the left side of the road, the police will catch, and then they will punish us. We are liable to the punishment because we need to know the laws of that land. So similarly, there are laws in this world we need to know, and the laws in the spiritual world, that also we need to know. So those laws are given in the scriptures, and we study scriptures for those purpose. But beyond this temporary world, there is another world of which we have information. So we have information through Brahma Samhita, and there are many other scriptures which gives information about that world. That world consists of another nature which is called as Sanatana, or eternal. So everything in the above the Brahma Jyoti is all part is all eternal. Another word you must have heard, that is Vaikuntha. So this is all Vaikuntha planet. Anything above the Brahma Jyoti is Vaikuntha planet. This is all material world. That world consists of another nature which is Sanatan, or eternal. Jiva is also described as Sanatan, eternal, and the Lord is also described as Sanatan in the 11th chapter. So the living entity, us and the Lord, we all are eternal actually. But when we die, what happens is the body remains here in this world, material world. Of course, the soul also is in the material world, but the soul transforms from, or transmigrates from one body to another body. So depending on our desire, another body is given to us. So we have, continuing our discussion, we have an intimate relationship with the Lord, and because we are all qualitatively one, the Sanatan Dharma, or the sky, the Sanatan Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Sanatan living entities, the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to revive our Sanatan occupation, or Sanatan Dharma, which is eternal occupation of the living entity. So the Lord is eternal, Sanatan. We are eternal, and the spiritual world, or the region which we saw in the picture above Brahma Jyoti, that is also eternal. But right now, that living entity, which is Sanatan, is now put into the material world, which is temporary. And the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to give us this understanding that we are actually eternal Sanatana, and this world is not a place for us to live. This is a temporary place. Things keeps on changing. This is a temporary place. It's not a place for, or fit place for us to live. So Bhagavad Gita gives that message and prepares us to go back to Godhead. So that's why there is a magazine which Prabhupada has introduced in his is back to Godhead. Back to Godhead means we came from there, now we have to go back to Godhead. Or we have to go back to the Vaikuntha planets. So that is the whole purpose of studying Bhagavad Gita. Right? So continuing on this, we are temporarily engaged in different activities, but all the activities can be purified when we give up these temporary activities and take up activities which are prescribed by the Lord or by the Supreme Lord. That is called as pure life. So right now, what we are engaged in this material world is a temporary activities and for the maintenance of this body. But apart from this temporary activities, we have to also learn about our spiritual position and learn about what Lord wants from us, and then perform those activities in this world. And when we do those activities, actually, according to the instructions of the Lord, then our life gradually becomes purified, or we move towards purifying our existence in this world. The Supreme Lord and His transcendental abode are both Sanatana, as are the living entities, and the combined association of the Supreme Lord and the living entities in the Sanatana abode is the perfection of human life. So in the human life, if we learn how to revive our relationship, instead of just focusing on those four things, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, if we invest our time and energy in understanding our position, that we are Sanatana, the Lord is Sanatana, and my job is to understand about Lord, reading the scripture, and then prepare myself to go back to the Sanatana abode of the Lord. So that is the perfection of human life. Right? Otherwise, we continue in the cycle of birth and death. So that is actually the free will, we say, free will or a choice which is given by Krishna to us. So we can act freely. If we decide to stay here and then continue with our journey from one life to another, one form of body to another form of body. So that option we always have. Krishna doesn't take that free will away from us. So that is one option. The other option is learn Bhagavad Gita, learn scriptures, understand scriptures, invest our time in this, and then prepare, along with whatever we are doing, prepare ourselves going back to Godhead. The Lord is very kind to the living entities because they are His sons. Right? So if a child, revolts against the parent and they leave the home, but the parents are very compassionate, and when the child leaves the home, and actually when the child is suffering outside, the parents feel really bad about that. So similarly, Krishna is our Supreme Father, and He actually feels really bad, and He wants us to go back to Him. So that's why Krishna Himself comes and He advertises about Himself. He says, your position is, you are living entity, I am the Supreme Lord, and you are not meant to be staying here and suffering in this world. You are meant to come back to me after the end of this life. So that is the actually goal of Krishna coming here and presenting the message of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is very kind to the living entities because they are His sons. The Lord Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Yoneshu Kaunteya, right? Aham Bija Prita. I am the father of all. Of course, there are all types of living entities according to their various karmas, but here the Lord claims that He is the father of all of them. I am the Bija Pradaprita, Sarva Yoneshis, means all the yonis. Yonis means all different kinds of living entities. And I am the seed giving father. That's what Krishna is saying in one of the verses in Bhagavad Gita. The Lord claims that He is the father of all of them. Therefore, the Lord descends to reclaim all those fallen, conditioned souls, to call them back to the Sanatan eternal sky, so that the Sanatan living entities may regain their eternal Sanatan position in the eternal association with the Lord. So that is the goal. Krishna comes here again and again. And He wants us to understand Bhagavad Gita. He wants us to understand that we are fallen and we have to go back to Godhead. That's why He makes those arrangements. The Lord comes Himself in different incarnations, or He sends His confidential servants as sons or His associates or acharyas to reclaim the conditioned soul. So this is the purpose, Lord, either He comes Himself or He sends His, we can say, generals, like Prabhupada was one of His general, so Prabhupada, he could, at the age of 70, he came to United States to give this message to everyone, right? He could have stayed easily in Vrindavan and he could have himself gone back to Godhead because he was spiritually qualified. But he took those difficulties, and he traveled through a ship, stayed in the sea water for, many days. And then he came here and then he gave the message of Lord to us. If we were not done, or not translated the books into English, it would have been really difficult for us to understand all these things, what we are studying today. So we must be really, really grateful to Srila Prabhupada for what he has done for us, the amount of trouble he has taken to translate these books, because all these books were in Sanskrit, and he made it available for us in English, or for the people in the English part of in this western part of the world, right? So he went through all the difficulties and gave us this message. So we must take it seriously, and then show our interest. And when we show our interest, then Krishna will make more arrangements for us, because Krishna is sitting in our heart as Paramatma. And as soon as we desire, he sends some devotees in contact with us. And then we can understand Bhagavad Gita through those devotees. The next paragraph is talking about Sanatana Dharma. So we have understood about the Hindu religion. So religion cannot be compared to Dharma. So that is the point being taught here. So what is Sanatan? Soul is Sanatan. So if we see other people around us, like Americans or Chinese or German or anybody, or even the other living entities like animals or plants or trees or whatever, insects. So they all have soul. So now when we see there are different religions like Hinduism, Christianity, and many others. But here what Prabhupada is talking is something actually different. So we'll try to understand what Sanatana Dharma means. Therefore, Sanatana Dharma does not refer to any sectarian process of religion. It is the eternal function of the eternal living entity in relation with the eternal Supreme Lord. So soul is eternal. Soul can have different bodies, like Americans, Chinese or Germans, as I said earlier, Australian, Brazilian, Pakistani or whatever, Within the body there is a soul, right? So that soul is eternal, having certain body. So Sanatana Dharma means it is referring to the dharma of that soul. And that soul is eternal and the Supreme Lord is eternal, and their relationship with the Supreme Lord is also eternal. So Sanatana Dharma refers, as stated previously, to the eternal occupation of the living entity. Right? So here living entity means any conditioned living entity that's or conditioned soul in this world. So that's why that is called as living entity. So for that soul, what is the eternal occupation of that soul? That is being explained. Now, Sripad Ramanujacharya has explained the definition of actually Sanatan, what Sanatan means. So Sripad Ramanujacharya has explained the word Sanatana as that which is neither having beginning nor end. So something which doesn't have beginning or end, that is Sanatana. Our experience so far is everything has a beginning and end. But Sanatan means no beginning, no end. We don't know, it's not, there is no starting point. It's there all the time. So this conception, this is something new which we are learning in Bhagavad Gita, in the study of Bhagavad Gita, that something there is eternally existing. There is no time concept. It's beyond time. Because when we bring in the time means there is a beginning and there is a continuation and there is an end. So this is a little difficult to digest in the beginning, but as we go through it and try to understand, intellectually also it is difficult to digest, because we don't have experience of something beyond time, that there is no beginning to something or no end to something. So, but we have to accept the message of the Lord. So I'll repeat again. Sripad Ramanujacharya has explained the word Sanatana as that which has neither beginning nor end. So when we speak of Sanatan Dharma, we must take it for granted on the authority of Sripad Ramanujacharya that there is neither beginning nor end. So anything which has which has no beginning and no end, that is basically Sanatan Dharma. Then the word Dharma is being discussed. What is the meaning of Dharma? So Dharma is not same as religion. So that's what Prabhupada is saying. The English word religion is little different from Sanatan Dharma. Religion conveys the idea of faith, and faith may change. So this is a very important statement to understand, that religion means some faith on something. For some example, somebody may be following Hinduism, and then or somebody may be following Christianity or Buddhism. So these are religious, or religion, or faith on a religion. But that person may change that faith or religion, based on anything, any situation may come, and Hindu may become Christian, Christian may become Hindu, or Christian may become Buddhist, or anything, or Muslim, or a Muslim may become Hindu, so they can change that faith. One may have a faith in a particular process, and he may change his faith and adopt another. But the Sanatan Dharma to that activity is which cannot be changed. So Sanatan Dharma cannot be equated with religion, because one may follow one religion and one may change that religion to some other religion based on the faith that person has. So this is not actually Sanatan Dharma, changing of the faiths. For instance, liquidity cannot be taken away from water, nor heat can be taken away from fire. Similarly, the eternal function of the eternal living entity cannot be taken away from the living entity. So what is that eternal function of that living entity? That will be described now. So Sanatan Dharma is eternal, integral with the living entity. So that is actually Sanatan Dharma, something which is part of the living entity eternally, right? That is actually Sanatan Dharma of that living entity. When we speak of Sanatan Dharma, therefore, we must take it for granted on the authority of Sripad Ramanujacharya. So Ramanujacharya is saying that which doesn't change, that is eternal. So the living entity is eternal, and Sanatan Dharma of that living entity is eternal. So what is that? That is neither has beginning or end. That which has neither end or nor beginning must not be sectarian, for it cannot be limited by any boundaries. So when we say that there is somebody in one faith and then they can change the faith, that means that is not Sanatan, right? So this faith or religion is actually because it can change. That is not the actually the Sanatan Dharma. Those belonging to the sectarian faith will strongly consider that Sanatan Dharma is also sectarian. But if we go deeply into the matter and consider in the light of modern science, it is possible for us to see that Sanatan Dharma is the business of all the people of the world, nay, all the living entities of the universe. So, Sanatan Dharma is something which is there with the living entity, all the living entity actually, and it remains eternally with the living entity. That can be defined as Sanatan Dharma. So this discussion is continuing, and in the next paragraph, Prabhupada says non-Sanatan religious faiths. So non-Sanatan religious faiths may have some beginning and in the annals, which is the record of event year by year. Annals means record of events year by year of human history. But there is no beginning to the history of Sanatan Dharma because it remains eternally with the living entities. Right? So what Prabhupada is saying, that other religions, they have beginning or end, because we can historically see that, Christianity began at certain point of time, Islam began at certain point of time. So they have a beginning history. Whereas Sanatan Dharma is not like that. There is no beginning because it's eternal. Insofar in the living entities are concerned, the authoritative Shastras state that the living entity has neither birth nor death. Right? So in Gita also Krishna is saying that the soul doesn't have beginning or end, or soul do not take birth and soul do not die. This is given in this is the first instruction actually Krishna gives to in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. After Arjuna presents all his doubts, this is the first instruction Krishna gives about the soul. He describes the soul in various different ways. And then one of the ways is saying that the soul doesn't take birth or soul doesn't die. It is eternal. In the Gita, it is stated that the living entity is never born and he never dies. He is eternal and indestructible, and he continues to live after the destruction of his temporary material body. In reference to the concept of Sanatana Dharma, we must try to understand the concept of religion from this Sanskrit root meaning word. From the Sanskrit root meaning of the word. So, the concept of Sanatana Dharma must be understood through the scriptures, and it is different from the religions what we understand or the conception of religions which we have. There are different religions available or there in this world, but Sanatana Dharma is not same as, or we cannot equate to that as with the other religions. So those are like sectarian religions, but the Sanatana Dharma is different. So this point, will be discussed more and more in details, and Prabhupada is going to explain that what is actually this Sanatana Dharma means. So we will continue with the discussion of Sanatana Dharma in our future sessions. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Haribol.